The season finale of The Acolyte is now upon us. And now it's time to run through what we know about episode 8, our top theories and how we think the episode will likely play out.
It's time for me to face the High Council.
Slowly the show has given us some of the answers, but a lot of questions still remain. So pull on your fresh Sith robes and buckle up as we dive in deep on episode 8.
That's the path to the dark side.
But before we get into all of that, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed today's video, and if you'd like to catch more of our Star Wars videos, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's get into the season finale of The Acolyte.
So you're going to listen.
One thing episode 7 gave us was more of the truth. It peeled away some of the layers of the Brendok mystery, as we discovered the Jedi, in my opinion at least, weren't entirely to blame for the Brendok tragedy. Some of that lies with the Witch Coven too. Effectively, it all came down to two different groups of Force users, not on the same page as one another and not understanding each other's intentions. Now, this led to Sol killing Mother Anastasia, when in hindsight, he really didn't need to. She wasn't preventing Osha joining the Jedi, and she certainly wasn't going to harm her daughters, but on the flip side of that, Sol was there armed with the belief that the witches were going to use the girls as part of an upcoming ritual, one where their survival wasn't guaranteed. So perhaps Sol should have made his beliefs and intentions clearer at the start. However, Anastasia should have read the room a little better, to say the least. We also found out the entire coven did indeed die, but it wasn't through the use of a lightsaber or poison or even the explosion as some have speculated, but rather through the use of the Force, and I believe this wasn't intentional from Indara. How many times would she have had to have saved a colleague from mind control? She didn't likely know the outcome of severing that tie, and speaking of accidents, it seems for now at least that the whole fire was too. Although May intentionally set fire to Osha's notebook, she didn't intend for it to spread to the electrics within the wall, therefore destabilising the whole facility as it did. Now, when all was said and done, we also learned that Sol, although the secret isn't nearly as bad as we initially thought, decided along with the other Jedi to not reveal the entire truth to the Council for Osha.
After everything this little girl has lost tonight, you take away her dream as well?
Instead, they told the Council what happened through a certain point of view, and this was because if the truth came out, then they would face discipline for failing to follow the Council's direct orders of not getting involved, and Osha wouldn't have been taken on as Sol's Padawan, or brought into the Order at all for that matter. It's one of them situations where each side will find it very easy to blame the other, and I think we'll see more of that in episode 8. Now, in the show's timeline, which we last visited in episode 6, where we'll likely pick up from in the season finale, we saw May restrained by Sol, as he's about to impart on her some Jedi truths.
So you're going to listen.
While Osha, on the other hand, is on the slippery slope of slowly being seduced to the dark side by Qimir. Now, kicking off with May and Osha, one of the biggest questions I have heading into the finale is how they'll see the events from the other side's point of view. Will May, after hearing what Sol has to say, realise the Jedi aren't totally to blame and that they were actually trying to help the girls fearing they were in danger? Or was seeing a mother killed in front of her eyes too much to come back from? Mama! Now, if you think that's a little complex, Osha's situation is far more complicated, as unlike May, she's still very much on her original master's side. However, as mentioned, she does seem to be coming around to the idea of Qimir and his view of the Force, while she's just now realising that there are more truths out there in the galaxy than what the Jedi had her believe. Qimir's words seem to be resonating with Osha on a level neither the Jedi or her master ever has, and I think it's this episode that Osha will have it revealed to her another side of the Brendok tragedy, just as May will. Anyways, episode 7 hinted to us that the twins were intended to be a single being when they were being created, as one conscience was created but somewhere along the line split into two beings. With the twins, we've clearly got one side that predominantly resides in the light, while the others predominantly in the dark. However, we've seen in recent weeks, they both have the capacity to embrace the opposing side. Now, one theory I've come across online, and it's a pretty interesting one, is that somehow, perhaps through the Force, either intentionally or naturally, this split conscience will merge back into one to create a single being from both twins. A fusion of May and Osha that achieves balance with both light and dark. Now, whilst this is a pretty cool idea, and we can't rule it out as they're intended to be one being after all, and the Force does work in mysterious ways, I personally don't see this being the route they're looking to explore, as a merge of the twins would bring forth a being that could potentially rival Anakin Skywalker, but what is clear is that May and Osha's creation is the early stages of the experiment Darth Plagueis will one day go on to attempt.
He could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life.
Which ultimately fails, but does kickstart a chain of events that lead to the Force creating Anakin itself, to balance the scales of light and dark. Now, this is an ability that's never quite been perfected, so I don't think we're going to see a roundabout way of doing it here, but I do think the whole idea of the twins being a Force dyad is a pretty good one, with the potential to be powerful when together and united. However, there's a chance we'll never actually see that happen, with the futures of both of the twins certainly up in the air. But with that being said, if one were to die, I'd certainly put my money on it being May at this point. After all, let's not forget Qimir and any potential Sith master of his lurking in the shadows will certainly see May as a loose thread that needs tying. He openly betrayed them, willing to turn over their secrecy to the Jedi. Now, bearing in mind we know the Sith aren't exposed to the Jedi High Council during the Acolyte,
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
so naturally anyone with information of them will need to be dealt with to maintain that. So I think the Sith's objective here will be to kill May, and I think we'll see that happen in episode 8. Now, Osha on the other hand, now she's started down this dark path, it looks almost certain to dominate her destiny.
Once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny.
She's had her head turned and she's beginning to understand Qimir, which will make her all the more open to hearing any potential Brendok reveals he might have in store for her. I think the writing's on the wall for Osha to not only replace May as the Acolyte, but potentially overtake her as well. If it doesn't happen this season, then for sure it'll happen before the overall story comes to a close in a future one. Now, Sol, on the other hand, his future does seem more certain. In fact, he's almost dug himself into a hole of sorts, and at this point it looks like there's no way for him to climb out. Although we're armed with more truth regarding the Brendok tragedy, which of course he does bear some of the responsibility for, alongside the other three Jedi and also the Coven themselves, but it wasn't all his doing. The real reason he hid the truth from the Council was because Master Indara put the idea into his head in the first place. Otherwise, he would have came clean. He only really ever has Osha's best interest in mind. However, there's been enough damage and far too much evidence with the potential to be misunderstood, makes it so easy for anyone, including the Jedi, to put the blame for Brendok and Kofar on him, and we actually begin to see that play out in episode 6.
Who else would possess the power to slay such a strong group?
So I think the Jedi will form the conclusion that the Jedi and Brendok 16 years prior defied the Council's orders to stay out of the Coven's affairs and played a part in the events that transpired enough for one of the daughters of the Witch Coven to dedicate their adult life to finding the 4 Jedi involved and seeking revenge. This not only left the Jedi involved dead, but it also led to a huge loss of life on Kofar all them years later, with Sol's team likely realising the truth before he killed him with his lightsaber to cover his own back. They might think he's gone rogue, as neither his nor the twins' bodies were found on Kofar, and Vanestra already knows how emotionally attached he is to them both. The fact he turned off his transponder when he was told not to screams the actions of a man who didn't want to be found.
Transponder off.
But ultimately, I think Sol's time in this story comes to an end in the season finale, and we'll get onto just how I think that'll go down in a moment. Anyways, we can't talk about Sol without addressing the other master in the room in Qimir. For a show that was called a Sith-led, there's still debates amongst the fans as to whether Qimir is actually one himself, and whilst he stopped short of telling the Jedi he was a Sith in episode 5, instead saying that's something the Jedi might refer to him as.
The Jedi like you might call me Sith.
I personally feel there's enough evidence here to say that he is, and the more I think of it, the more it makes sense as to why it hasn't verbally been confirmed. I think the showrunner wants to put us in a position of Master Sol, where it's suspected, but is not totally sure himself. But I think this guy's the real deal, and not just any Sith, but actually Darth Plagueis himself, the live-action and canon version of Palpatine's Sith Master. And this all comes from the clues and hints dropped throughout the season, which if you're not caught up on, then definitely check out the video. I'll link at the end of this one. But anyway, I think we'll also learn the Sith are also involved with the Coven on Brendok as well, perhaps in the season finale or in a potential season 2 if it happens, and I think this is how Qimir seems to know more than Osha does about her past. So perhaps this reveal could come out when he's telling her about it, but to go a step further with that, given how Darth Plagueis was interested in the ability to create life, through the Force, and also Force dyads, as they're seen as the path to eternal life for the Sith. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sith, maybe Plagueis and his master, were on Brendok, and perhaps even played a part in the creation of the twins as well. Of course, with the 2 flashbacks we've seen so far coming from both Osha and the Jedi, it actually makes sense why the Sith were present in neither one. Unlike the Jedi this time, the Sith were well aware of the importance of a Force dyad and its potential power, as the ancient Sith were said to possess the ability to create a Force dyad between 2 individuals, giving them a power-up. So really, I think it comes down to the Sith, probably Plagueis wanting to learn that knowledge once again. The Sith being present, or at least aware of Brendok, also explains how Qimir is able to put forward some hard truths regarding the Jedi to Osha.
Even after everything he did to you.
Which wouldn't carry any weight, let's be real, if they weren't there to witness it firsthand themselves. Now, I think part of that journey to the truth the twins will embark on will actually lead them back to the place it all begun, with Brendok. After all, this is Star Wars, and like poetry, it rhymes. I definitely think there's more to unravel there, both in terms of the tragedy that occurred 16 years ago, but also with the Vergence in the Force, which aided in their creation. I also think it's here where the final showdown of the season will take place, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's here we witness the end of Master Soul, and possibly May too, where the Sith will truly tie up the last of those loose ends. The way the wind is blowing, I'll put my money on it being either Osha or Qimir to deliver the finishing blow.
They see my face, they all die.
Rather than May, I think she'll be showing signs of conflict towards the end. Now, in terms of crazy surprises, we do know a character played by David Harwood comes in for episode 8. Now, the fact they're only coming in the season finale feels to me like it's a big reveal of some kind. It would be pretty cool if it's Qimir's Sith Master, and if you're on the Qimir Plagueis train, then that would make him Darth Tenebrous. However, there's also a chance he isn't aligned with a Sith at all, and perhaps he's a high-ranking Jedi we've heard of before. So there's my overall thoughts and theories on how the Acolyte season finale will play out, given everything we've had from the show so far. But now it's time to hear yours. So as always, drop your thoughts, theories, and wilder speculations down in the comments below. Remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and feel free to subscribe to the channel if you want to catch more of our Star Wars videos. Catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you.